welcome everywhere. We're happy that you're attending. We have people from all over North America, English and Spanish. This webinar will be in English. So let me first start to introduce our speaker today. We're very excited because not only is this a great story for anyone who has licensing operations, but it's a great story for us at Thales because it's our own internal processes and success that I know you could all relate to, and it's all important. So Vickie is our current director of virtual products, and she works within the cloud protection and licensing division of Thales. She has over 20 years experience in consumer electronics and high-tech industries. She's held a leadership role within large global companies and areas of engineering, manufacturing, business process improvements, and operations. Vickie has helped to successfully deliver many new products and services to the market. Her areas of passion are efficiency, scalability with international scope. And I could vouch for that because we could see that immediately in the way that our processes and operations have improved since Vickie has changed the way that we do business. So a couple housekeeping things before we start. There is a question box that you could see in your screen. Please submit any questions at any time, and then we will entertain those questions at the end. And take advantage of Vickie's time because she's available for questions and answers, and will be happy to help in any way she can. There are also 2 downloadable documents that you can see. You're free to download those anytime you want. So Vickie, over to you.
Great, thanks Marcy. Hi everyone. Yeah, so I'll be talking today about driving operational efficiency by automating the software supply chain. And this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. It is our own internal story, but I hope that you'll find it relevant in your businesses as well. So let's get started. The agenda today, first we'll be talking about market drivers, what things were causing us to make a change. What are some of the software supply chain benefits? What challenges were we experiencing in our former business as we tried to transition to a newer way of doing business? What solution did we choose and implement? And then how did we evaluate our success? How did we measure our success? And then that will be followed by a Q&A session. So again, thanks for the introduction, Marcy. I've been with Thales for about 13 years, but only in the last 3 years in a new role called a Director of Virtual Products. And this is because the Virtual Products team was formed 3 years ago under the operations department head, under the VP of operations, and it was specifically to address some of the problems that we were experiencing and to implement solutions that we'll be exploring. So it was a new role, and it was a conscious change in organizational structure to be able to deal with these types of challenges and opportunities. I'm located in Belcamp, Maryland, which is in the US, and you'll see there my contact information, my email address. Feel free to shoot me an email after the webinar with any questions that aren't answered today. Okay, so market drivers. What is it that was happening in the environment that was causing us to make a change? In the customer and competitive arenas, we were seeing a large desire to shift from a CapEx type model to an OpEx model. A lot of customers demanding this type of change, and we needed to support that with our software and our licensing. We also were seeing a consumer mentality that's, available in things like Amazon, where you can go online, you can click, you can order something, and you have instantaneous delivery. So customers were having expectations of similar type of instantaneous delivery for commercial products as well. And thirdly, security, just a broader awareness that there needs to be security around deliverables, both physical deliverables, but here we're mostly talking about virtual deliverables like software, licenses, and so forth. Strategically, within our company, we were looking to do a few things. We were looking to improve margins. My contribution to that was mostly to reduce operating expenses, but of course, increasing revenue as a byproduct. Second, we wanted to enable scalability. So as the business was moving away from more physical items, more hardware-centric solutions to more software and services, we needed to prepare for the growth in that area. So we needed to have solutions and delivery mechanisms that could scale as the business grew. We didn't want to continue to add headcount to deliver things manually. We also wanted to achieve more immediate revenue recognition. And of course, we wanted to increase the satisfaction of our customers, making sure that we're retaining customers and gaining market share. So let's look at some of the differences between traditional supply chain and software supply chain. So this has to do with the offer, meaning traditional, typically hardware elements, and then software supply chain, more software virtual licenses. And also I'll mix in a little bit of how the organizational structure looked before and after. So before, when we were focusing most on traditional supply chain deliveries, we knew that we had longer and more stable product life cycles, meaning when a new product was introduced, typically that product was around for several months, maybe even years. So there weren't a lot of changes, not a lot of fluctuation. We could introduce something and we could stay with that for a while. With software, obviously, we have shorter, more fluid product life cycles. We needed to be able to deliver new versions of software, new license models, much, much more quickly. So we need to structure our organization and our systems accordingly. Also, what we saw is that with delivering more traditional items, the delivery process was well understood and smooth, but there were a lot of human touches. There were a lot of people involved to deliver. We wanted to move toward a zero-touch model where we could have systems involved and integrated, and we could have as little human touch as possible. On the traditional supply chain side, we had multiple departments, siloed processes, lots of handoffs between functions. And on the software supply chain, we look to consolidate those and bridge the gaps between those silos. On the traditional supply chain side, we had different licensing standards, different models, different ways of offering things, and we wanted to, with software supply chain, really standardize on best practice, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And finally, remove some of the complexity around the traditional offer and simplify, make some standard offers available that will fit the needs of most and leverage those for scalability. So I wanted to highlight three of the main challenges, our three key challenges that we were facing before we talk about what solution we implemented and how we solved those challenges. The first one is around manual processes, which is a little bit self-explanatory. We had a lot of people involved. We had a lot of different processes involved from one product line to another, not a lot of standardization, which leads to our second challenge, the disparate solutions. By disparate solutions, I mean different product lines within our company would try to offer very similar products or services to our end customers, but with a slight twist or something a little bit different from each other. And they wouldn't do this knowingly. It was just truly that the different product lines were creating offers, trying to launch those offers, hand them over to operations, and then operations is dealing with a lot of variation. Nobody was really looking across product lines to try to say which one of these is the best practice, and let's try to standardize across. And the third challenge was around visibility. Really didn't have real-time visibility for either our end customers who wanted to see, which versions of software they've downloaded or what's the status of their licenses that they've purchased. Have they activated all of them, or are there some left that are unactivated? A lot of different pieces of data that are just hidden in our back office systems and not accessible by customers, and actually not accessible even by some of our internal stakeholders. So these are the three main challenges. I wanted to show you a little bit about each of these three. First one being manual processes. This is a simple diagram showing where we were a few years ago with software delivery, software and license delivery. Customer would submit their purchase order in step one to our customer service team. That demand would be booked in our ERP system, which happens to be Oracle. After that, step two shows basically entering the software supply chain or the back office team to fulfill that demand. The fulfillment person involved would have two main deliverables, two main steps that they'd have to go through. First one in step 3A is that we were actually physically burning DVDs and shipping them via mail to the customer. The second step is that if that software was licensed, in many cases it was, needed to be enabled via license, there would be a swivel seat operation whereby the fulfillment person would go over to a separate, totally disconnected internal licensing system. It's represented by this box that says WPS. They would create the relevant license for that software, whichever type of license was ordered, and then that system would email an activated license key to the customer. After that step was done, the fulfillment person would go back to our ERP system, Oracle, and have to close out the line item such that we could invoice and recognize revenue. All the steps here, almost all of the steps here are manual. So the challenge is that we have manual steps, which leaves us open to errors and also longer lead times. We have delay of our revenue recognition as well, because it's going to take several hours or maybe even a couple of days for the fulfillment person to do these things and for the customer to receive their DVD. And then the security of licensing is kind of low. We were sending an activated license key in an open email. No customer self-service capability, no insight or visibility into what has happened on the customer end. We've just sent some deliverables. Really, that's where it ends. We don't know if the customer received it, is using it, or anything. So this was the manual process flow before. On the disparate solutions challenge, this graphic is representing what we had as far as systems and processes internally. So on the left, this represents our back office systems like Oracle for ERP, CRM, and help desk. These were generally consolidated and single systems to perform certain functions. That was fine. Where we have the problem was then once the demand was booked in our Oracle system, we now had to have a customer service rep, again, swivel seat, as we call it, to another set of back office systems, lots of different variations of processes to figure out, okay, for this particular software item, what do I need to do? And for this slightly different software item, what do I need to do? It was very confusing and a lot of opportunity for mistake and just a lot of overhead to manage. So we had many, many processes. We had many, many back office systems disconnected primarily from our Oracle ERP. The majority were manual in nature. And this problem was not just a static problem, this problem was growing. So for every new product that was introduced, we might get another process and another system. It was getting a bit out of control, so we needed to put a stop to that. The third problem around the lack of visibility is that because we had data only available in these offline back office systems, customers didn't really have a good snapshot or visibility into what was happening with their licenses, didn't have any ability to self-activate, to manage their licenses, anything like that. They would be reliant on Thales staff during business hours to give them the information that they needed. Similarly, we didn't have a lot of information about channel partner. We do have a sales strategy that involves channel partners many times, so we didn't have a lot of information in our licensing systems about channel partners and their end customers. Okay, so what did we do to go about set out solving this issue? We didn't want to attack each problem or each challenge individually. We needed a solution that was holistic and comprehensive in nature. One solution that we could implement that would address all three of our issues. So we selected the Sentinel solution. Multiple facets of that solution. We used multiple types, but all within the Sentinel umbrella. And with that single solution, we were able to solve the first problem by automating many of the processes that were manual. So we got rid of the inefficiencies and the delays and the error potential of the manual by automating and integrating our systems. Secondly, we standardized the solutions. So this was partially done by the system, the Sentinel solution. Another part was really about discussing with all of the product teams the fact that there were different variations and trying to really get some consensus about what's the best practice, coming up with a recommendation or a best practice and saying, let's standardize on this, such that when a new product is introduced, you're selecting an existing solution. And only in exceptional cases, would you create something new. And thirdly, we were able to provide real-time visibility by introducing the Sentinel EMS customer portal. So we did provide customers with a portal where they could go in and retrieve information and actually manage some of their licenses themselves in a self-service manner. So let's look in detail about how the Sentinel solution solved each of the problems. First, on the manual processes, this is a revised flow that shows how the same product that we looked at before is delivered today. Starting with the customer PO, still booked in our Oracle system, that has not changed. What changed is everything else after that. After that, there's zero touch from a Thales personnel standpoint. Everything is fully automated. The way this is done is Oracle sends relevant order information across to our back office system, which is now not a homegrown, disconnected system. It's now a Sentinel-based EMS entitlement management system. When that order information goes across to the Sentinel-based EMS system, an entitlement is created for that order, for that customer. And then a unique entitlement ID is sent back to Oracle. When Oracle receives that unique entitlement ID, that's a signal to Oracle that, okay, the entitlement's been created successfully. I'm now okay to release a hold on the order line in Oracle, which closes the line, allows us to recognize revenue and invoice, and the closure of that line triggers what is actually the deliverable to the customer now. It's an email deliverable. This email contains two important elements. One is a entitlement ID, that unique entitlement ID that was created in EMS. And the second is a portal, basically a URL to the EMS portal. So essentially this email deliverable, it doesn't contain a license key anymore. It contains instructions for the customer to go retrieve their license key, to activate their license key within the portal at their convenience. And although it's an extra step for the customer, there's much more flexibility in allowing the customer to do it themselves, to self-activate. There are some parameters that they can provide. There's some selections they can make. They can do things much more flexibly in a self-service manner. And then, of course, there's the software download, which there would be a link for the software download included in the email, or in some cases, we actually host the software in the EMS portal. So customer gets everything that they need, and they get that email within minutes. So the change from the previous to the new is the fulfillment mechanism is fully automated. Fulfillment time has gone down to minutes, revenue recognition down to minutes, more security around the licensing delivery because you now can see who's logged into the portal by username, who's activating licenses. It's a closed loop system now. We can see what's actually happened and we can actually investigate if we see that we've sent an entitlement email to the user and they've never gone into activate. We can follow up, we can find out what's going on. So much more insight from the business standpoint as well. The standardization, here's a depiction of how this picture looks now. Still ERP on the left, business type systems or financial systems are unchanged, but because we have this integration, because we have standardization, now we have a customer service group that's dealing with far fewer processes, primarily just two, and far fewer back office systems. So we were able to retire several back office systems and take the products that they supported and integrate those into Sentinel EMS. So those decommissioned legacy systems were old and not very user-friendly anyway. We're able to decommission those, move the products into EMS, and that's more of a modern supported best-in-class system. So fewer systems, fewer processes, and a much better ratio of automated fulfillment to manual fulfillment. And on the visibility, a little bit more information about the portal, the end customer portal. So within that portal, there's all kinds of information that can be retrieved by the customer. They don't have to rely on business hours support by Thales staff. They can activate licenses, they can download software, they can look for updates, they can kind of slice and dice their data in whatever way makes sense to them. They can look at their order history, activation history. If there's any licenses that are locked to let's say to a hardware device, they can sort by devices. Lots of different ways they can look at the data. I do want to mention that there is standard functionality of the end customer portal that works very well, but there's also the opportunity to customize views and customize elements of that portal. We actually chose the path of going with some customization just to enhance the customer experience even more and give them different ways to view their data. So that's something that I would recommend, but it's not required. And finally, around channel partner functionality, I did mention that was something that we wanted and a gap that we had. That channel partner functionality is available as well, but we have not implemented it yet. It's in our next phase of implementation. We wanted to do a little bit more about giving support for channel partners who would like to access the portal, activate licenses on behalf of their end users, instead of having the end users always do the operations themselves. So that's something that we're doing next. Okay, finally, I wanted to talk about, after this implementation, how do we know that we were successful? How, what measurements do we have to point to that show that this project was in fact successful? Here's a list of objectives and the results. The first objective was a tough one to measure, but it was an important one, and that was to define clear ownership. Meaning, within our operations group, who owns the task of making sure that we're talking across different business groups and product lines to set standards and to make sure that we have a good way of delivering and having standard license models and so forth. We were missing that several years ago until we established the virtual products team and gave the ownership to that team. It's been really well received. It's very clear now who has ownership to establish the standards and make the recommendations to product teams. The next one is around reducing lead times or time to delivery. We actually measured before the implementation of this solution, it was taking about 2.8 days on average for the fulfillment of some of these software licenses to occur. And that wasn't because it was active time, it was just the nature of the handoffs, booking the order, going across into a supply chain planner's role to pick up, to allocate to a fulfillment person, and the fulfillment person has other orders they're processing. Just the queue time was adding up, and by the time the fulfillment would actually occur, it was multiple days. Now we've got the fulfillment time down to, I put 1 hour here, but in reality it's minutes. Maximum would be 1 hour depending upon the background processes that run between our systems with the integration. So significant improvement there. Standardization of processes and systems, I showed you the graphics. We were able to eliminate 3 legacy systems, just totally decommission those and migrate the products over to Oracle. Much, much simpler back office. We were able to create a self-service licensing portal. That is the EMS portal that I mentioned, and we did take advantage of the opportunity to customize that. And finally, reducing operating costs in order to increase our profitability. We estimated that in 2018, we saved around 260,000 euro by eliminating many of the manual steps and even many of the follow-up post-sales type inquiries that we were handling ourselves, because we've now given visibility to customers to pull that data themselves. And that concludes my content. Marcy, do you want to go with Q&A session?
Yes, great. Thanks. It's an amazing story. I mean, just the metrics itself, just explain on its own the value of the different things, consolidating the databases and making it easier for people who work in that environment to get their job done, therefore it results in increased customer satisfaction. But I had an interesting conversation with you before we actually, when we were preparing for this webinar, and you mentioned to me how when you initially started on this project, you had X number of licensing databases. And by the time you actually launched, it had doubled. And again, you know, it just kept multiplying. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that resonates with a lot of our, you know, a lot of the people in our audience.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, I don't have the exact figures, but yeah, we did have multiple licensing systems, multiple license generation tools when we were at a point where we knew we had to start standardizing. And then, like many companies, we grow through acquisition. So that's a very common way and one that we experienced of acquiring or adding more more systems and databases to the mix. That's exactly what happened with us as we would acquire companies or new business units would come on. Along with them came their own licensing generation tools, their own licensing methodologies and databases. So yep, it got worse for sure before it got better.
Sounds like it, but I guess standardization was the key thing here. It made it simpler. You were able to use one system to generate keys for all the different products. So one of the questions that's come up, it's exactly, well, not exactly, but what was your decision process between using Oracle for financials and, you know, not deciding to implement some sort of licensing, bolting in some sort of licensing capability to Oracle. So could you explain a little bit about your decision?
Yeah, sure. So quite simply, we recognize that Oracle itself is really pretty good at being an ERP system and handling financial transactions, but it's really not a license management or entitlement management tool at all. So we didn't seriously consider that, although I know some people have. We didn't seriously consider that because we recognized that that was not really a best-in-class solution. So we started thinking about best-in-class. You know, some stakeholders also were asking, well, why don't we just build something ourselves? But the truth is we had a lot of homegrown, you know, an assortment of homegrown solutions that we needed to standardize upon, and none of them were really sufficient or flexible enough. So we ended up going with the Sentinel solution. It was designed to do just what we're having it do. So we left Oracle to do the financials and Sentinel to manage the licensing and entitlements.
And also you could focus on innovation, right? You didn't have to waste your time trying to, you know, either develop something that you're not an expert at. So I think that's really key, meaning
Sure.
we didn't have to develop.
Correct.
Now, there's a quick question that's come up regarding data migration, and it's relating to how long did it take to migrate databases? I'll read it to you. How did you manage to migrate existing licenses being out already to get it migrated into HMAuto or another platform?
Yeah, so when we decommission an old tool or system, data migration or migration of the legacy license information is definitely a major component of the project. You know, if we didn't have existing database and we could just start fresh with a new offer, hey, that's a lot easier. But a big part of this project was how do we retire an old system, get rid of that. So the database migration was key. And I would say that our lesson learned there is that really the most important part of the database migration is to come up with the clear business rules and mapping of how is the old data going to map forward to the new system. And there are a lot of decisions that have to be made there. It's not always straightforward. But if you spend the time up front to understand what needs to be migrated from the old system to the new, and then the execution of it is pretty straightforward. So we really didn't struggle on the execution. It was more about the decision of what needs to be migrated, what doesn't, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So
and how it maps to. Okay, great. I wanted to remind our audience that this is a great opportunity to submit more questions. I have one or two more to go, so please submit some before we wrap up. Vickie, there's a question here regarding hardware embedded. So how did you manage to migrate existing licenses being sorry, that was already, I already read that, apologize. Did you also have software embedded in hardware? And
Yes,
if
yes, we
so,
did. Mm-hmm.
yeah, what were the changes that you had to make to your hardware?
Yeah, so we do have hardware. We sell hardware, and um, the hardware, I'm speaking about specific examples here, but we had some hardware items that had features that were licensed using a legacy licensing approach, a homegrown tool, essentially. And we wanted to get rid of that homegrown tool, so the question was, well, what do we do about the hardware that's licensed with it? So the answer was, yes, we did have to work with the R&D teams that designed the hardware to update or change the software within it. Basically, we had to ask them to build in the Sentinel libraries that could read the Sentinel-based licenses. So there was a small effort to work with the design teams to change that software within the hardware, but it was a one-time effort. And now we were able to license the features that were already licensed before with the new licensing approach, and then many, many more. It's given the hardware teams much more flexibility in how they can license features and functions within their hardware platform.
And didn't you say it was like developed once and you didn't have to keep going back to developing the
Yes,
licensing?
exactly.
Just,
Yep.
I
It was a
think that's,
one-time effort on the hardware side, and then, gives lots and lots of possibilities and flexibility on the licensing side to activate, count, do whatever the hardware team wanted to do in software.
great. How long did it take you to introduce this system? Especially, business doesn't stop. So how did you manage to do this, introduce it and roll it out without having an impact on the day-to-day business?
So overall, I mean, we had discussions about doing this type of thing for quite a while, but they were really just discussions before any org changes were made, before any call to action actually occurred. So I would say the discussion and the thinking about it was probably a year or two. But once we made the decision to do something about it, we changed our org structure a little bit to create this new group, and we gave someone the ownership to go about making the change. I would say about 9 months to implement and to get the first 1 or 2 products on board. And then after those initial products, it became kind of a rollout of, okay, the next product and the next product, the next product. We were able to onboard many, many additional, we're over 10, probably closer to 15 products now on this platform. So I'd say 9 months for the initial implementation, and then it's ongoing as we onboard more and more products all the time.
And did we have any downtime? Did it take you a week? Were you running systems simultaneously?
Yeah, so we had one example I can think of. We did schedule a 1 week, like after the end of our quarter. Typically, there's a bit of a lull in order intake volume. So we actually scheduled about a 1 week freeze for any new business or new orders in that particular product line. But we were actually able to make the changeover from the old system to the new in a little bit less time than we expected, so maybe 3 or 4 days. And then as soon as that happened, as soon as the new system was up and running, we could go ahead and catch up on the orders that came in for those 3 or 4 days. And then we kept the legacy system around just in like read-only mode, so we didn't lose a bunch of history, but we migrated a recent history to the new, and then we were off and running.
So what's next?
So what's next? Of course, the channel partner functionality. We just had another acquisition/integration. So we have now another legacy tool that we need to, decommission and migrate. And then I would say possibly some more enhancements to the portal. We've done some enhancements, which has been really well received. So I would say channel partner functionality and additional enhancements just to make that customer experience, the portal experience, first class, because really we want the customers, both channel partners as well as end users, to use the portal, leverage the portal as much as possible.
So the big win here is that we're actually, now we know who our end users are, right? We don't have to depend on getting information or from partners, or when we sell bulk licenses, they actually have to go and register, so we can communicate and update them automatically and anything else they need without having to kind of discover who they are. So that's a huge, benefit to us, isn't it? Bridging the gap between what we sell through the channel and our end users.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, here's a question for you, and I'll just read it because I don't know if I understand it as, I think it's a bit technical, but do you apply this to DevOps, CI/CD process? Any integration with DevOps tools involved in automation?
That is a technical one. We do use CI/CD for in general, but can I say that we've used that for this particular implementation? We did not. So that concept, those tools are tools that we use internally for development of other things, but we did not apply that here in this case.
Okay. If anyone wants to reach out to Vickie directly, her email address, I know she brought it up in the first couple slides, but in case you missed it, is Vickie, Vickie.white at thalesgroup.com, THALES group.com, or you can reach me at Marcy, marcy.clapp@thalesgroup.com. So I think that's about it. I don't see any more questions coming in. I really want to thank you, Vickie. I know it's almost 10 for us, so 10 p.m., but it's great to be able to work with all of our APAC customers and share this great story. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me or Vickie directly. Thank you very much, Vickie. It's been a great webinar, and I've enjoyed working with you. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Marcy. Thanks, everyone.